What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
Hi. Hope you all had a good Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble.
We did. We had a good one. We made it ourselves. It was great. And then we're back to normal life. But in a couple weeks, we will be in Tennessee.
But still, Grandma, when you're watching, when you're listening, no more hosting of Thanksgiving.
No more traveling.
Back to you.
No more
You
travel.
can come back.
And honestly,
It's
it wasn't that, like, everything turned out fine. And even like stress wise, it wasn't crazy.
I realized why I offered to bring a side, and that's it.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I actually didn't think it was terrible. It was more lonely. There was just less people. It was just the four of us, which is like,
it just seemed like another dinner.
That's
almost,
what
I mean?
That's exactly.
We're
I
also
felt
very
like
informal, so
yeah, I just felt like, oh, this is just like the four of us hanging out for like a game night. Like
Right.
that, it was just a little different,
Yeah.
but whatever. There was a woman who was missing, and in our area, actually in Oregon, but they had said that she went missing on Mount Hood. Not Mount Hood. Wait, was it Mount Hood?
that's what you told me earlier. Was Mount Hood.
Why am I thinking that? Well,
If I'm being honest, I actually don't think it's Mount Hood.
I know that doesn't sound right. Anyways, she supposedly went missing somewhere, and they were looking and searching, and there was a lot of weird information, I guess, that was going around. And I don't even think her husband was the one who reported her missing. It was actually, I think, a coworker, because she did
Brightwood.
Brightwood?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it says dogs believed to belong to slain Brightwood woman found dead.
Right, but that's not where they
And
thought.
it says Clackamas County.
Right. I know that. I don't remember. I think it was Mount Hood is where they thought she had gone, like supposedly had gone, and she disappeared. No, that's where they found her. They didn't find her anywhere near where they said. Anyways, regardless, there was a lot of really suspicious information going around. Unfortunately, they found her body, have arrested her husband, of course, for murder. So cool.
But then there's the worst part.
Yeah. And then she had two dogs.
For all you people that are going to think I'm weird for thinking it's worse.
She had two dogs that she brought with her everywhere. According to one of her coworkers, she did this because she was afraid for her life after filing divorce from her husband. She had her dogs with her everywhere. Well, they just found the dogs deceased,
dead
as well. So her husband has been arrested. He's a garbage pail kid. To be honest with you, he's a garbage pail kid. You not only killed your wife, because obviously my assumption is he was an abusive piece of shit, because that's the only time you're going to fucking find somebody murdering their significant other.
Even worse, you killed
two innocent dogs. So you can go straight to hell, sir.
I know. We have my dog in here, and she keeps staring at us like, what happened?
Anywho, that takes us to, that's just a little update from our area. Other than that, nothing else left to say.
If you hear dog jingles, like I said, Olive's in here, so that'd be the reason why. It's her collar.
Although Olive's going to be a good girl, and she's just going to sit like a good girl. So today we are talking about a man named Charles Rhines. Now, what are we talking about? This happened in 1992 in Rapid City, South Dakota. Charles Rhines murders Donovan Schaefer. This is what we're talking about. Side note, Sierra's very familiar with South Dakota because she spent 2 years over there.
I went to college there.
She went to college over there for 2 years. So she when I started researching this, I was like, oh, well, Sierra's going to know where some of these things are, because she spent 2 years there. So,
and she previously, before recording it, she did tell me the cities, and I said, yep, I've been to both of those.
Yeah, and Sierra went to quite a few places over there because she played softball. So she would travel. A lot of the
Midwest is where
she would travel the Midwest. So for all of you South Dakotans, this one's for you.
Our Sodaks.
Sure. So we're going to get into a little background. So Charles Russell Rhines was born July 11th, 1956. He was born in McLaughlin, South Dakota, and he was born to Richard and Ruth Rhines. And he was actually the last of 4 children. So not a lot is known about his upbringing, like his childhood. And when I say not a lot, I mean nothing. There is nothing actually about his upbringing. it kind of jumps all the way to the fact that he attended McLaughlin public school in the McLaughlin, South Dakota area. He dropped out of school when he was a sophomore. So he just, I'm not judging people who drop out of school. For one, there's this really weird misconception that if you drop out of school that you're a big fat loser.
My dad dropped out of school and he's pretty successful.
I was just going to say, I personally know a few people, my husband being one of them, who dropped out of school, got his GED, and he's very successful because he's worked his ass off. So I can't say
it is possible.
dropping out of school is the worst thing that you could do. I also think that people who, when they're sophomores and juniors, if you're not cutting it in school, there is other programs out there that can help you finish your high school diploma or get your GED. And that sometimes is the better path to take. So anyway,
School is not for everybody.
School is not for everybody. There are ways. So anyway, so he drops out of school when he's a sophomore, and he actually ends up enlisting in the Army, and he serves 3 years as an infantryman in the Army. And while he's in the Army, he also earns his GED. Now, for those of you that are not from the United States, the GED is what is called the General Equivalency Degree. And what that is it's basically an equivalent degree that you get instead of a high school diploma, and you have to take a test. Now, the test is not super easy for anyone who's never taken a GED. You have to study for it. And it takes when my husband got his GED, he actually took classes where they teach you the things that you need to really know to get his GED.
Yeah,
it's not easy.
Like the high school teachers teach night class or something like that. Or at least it used to
be
like that.
He took his at a college.
Oh,
he took his at a college. I actually have a friend who that is her job. She works at a college, and her job is to work with adult people looking to seek their GED and stuff. So that's what he does. So he has a GED, which again, not necessarily a bad thing. You can go on as he does, you can go on to go to college, because he continues his education after getting his GED, and he attends the University of South Dakota in Springfield, Springfield, South Dakota. Now, he never actually finishes the vocational training course that he actually took there. So he went there specifically for a program. The reason he did not finish, though, is because he got caught stealing from another student's room. So I'm assuming he was in their dorms, and he gets caught. He's stealing out of one of the other students, and that's immediate, that's immediate expulsion, right? Now, he ends up getting convicted of third-degree burglary, and he receives a 3 years in prison sentence for that shit. So I don't know what he was stealing. Hold on. You're going to say that more than once, I think, in this episode, by the way. I'm just throwing that out there.
Sorry, Grandma.
I'm just saying that right now. He got 3 years. So my thought is third-degree burglary. I don't know what burglary versus robbery is. I know that there's something to do with the definition. I think burglary is when you're just stealing, and robbery is when you're stealing with a weapon or something. However, he had to have been stealing something that was worth some money, or a good chunk of money, to get 3 years for that. So yeah, so he spends, well, I don't know if he actually spends.
Because third-degree burglary is just unlawfully entering a building or other structure with the intent to commit a crime. So the crime itself doesn't sound that bad.
Keep this in mind as we continue through this story, because again, the fact that you feel that this is a little bit of an extensive and unjust sentence, because that actually plays into this. I am not justifying what this guy did. You'll understand more later, but keep that in mind, because I feel the same way. When I saw that he had 3 years, I was like, damn, for stealing something out of a dorm room.
Thank God you made me put that bubble gum back.
I'm saying, do you see what your life could have been like? So anyway, so he spends, he gets sentenced to 3 years. Now, he does get out on parole, so he doesn't actually spend 3 years. But while he's on parole, he decides that it'd be a good idea to rob a liquor store with a shotgun.
Nice.
So he obviously did not learn his lesson. Now, for that, he is sentenced to 10 years in prison for armed robbery. So, that's okay. But he is released from prison in 1987. Now, in June of 1991, he gets a job at Diggum Donuts in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Don't even ask me. I don't know what that is.
I wasn't going to ask you.
I was like, I don't know what that is.
This is in 91. They may not even still be open.
There's still things from the 90s.
I didn't say there wasn't, but after this story, they might not be open. Okay. Now there was 2 reports. He was either a night baker or he was the manager. There were 2 different things, but regardless, he worked at night.
Okay.
Okay. So he worked at night, and he's got this job. So this is 1991. So keep in mind, he's 35 years old. But again, he's an ex-felon at this point because he's been in prison at least twice for robbery and burglary. So he applies and gets a job, and he's working at night at Diggum Donuts in Rapid City, South Dakota. Now, according to the co-owner of the donut shop, they had no knowledge of his criminal history at all. So when they hired him, they did not know that he had this.
Were background checks really a thing back then?
I don't think so. I mean, 91, for reals, I was 10, so I didn't.
Oh, I guess that's true.
I didn't have a job, but I know in 96, 97-ish, when I got my first job, I didn't have to do a background check. So I don't think it was as big of a deal.
Well, because I was going to say that would make sense as to why they didn't know.
Well, and especially for a donut shop, right? Other things you might have had to have a background check.
I say now, I don't know how long it's been around. Some jobs you have to check.
I
was a previous felon.
Well, you're supposed to. They asked that question when I was getting jobs. So there's a good chance he was supposed to mark that, but he did not, right? Which that's a whole nother topic that I'm not getting into. Anyways, so they had no knowledge of his criminal history. Not long after that, after he's working there, a 17-year-old kid named Sam Harder, he gets a job also at the donut shop and basically gets to know Charles Rhines, right? Like they work together at night. So he kind of gets to know him. And then one day they're closing, or I don't even think they're closed. Well, maybe they're whatever. They're leaving work at the same time. Sam was like, "Hey, Charles, do you need a ride home? Because every day you're walking home or you're riding the bus. I've got a car. I've got you if you want to ride home." And he's like, "Yeah, sure. That's fine." Well, he finds out as he's driving Charles Rhines home that Charles Rhines actually lives in a motel. And he kind of is shocked, and he's kind of like, "Why do you live in a motel?" And he's like, "Well, I pay to live here, but this is just where I live." And Sam was like, "Well, I have an extra room in my apartment, so do you want to just be my roommate and just live with me, and we can live together?" And he was like, "Hell yeah." Now, again, this is a 35-year-old man who is rooming with a 17-year-old kid, which normally wouldn't seem like a crazy big deal, except for, to me, it's always weird when a 35-year-old man is not able to provide for himself in a way where he's living in a motel, right? That just seems a little weird to me, but whatever. I mean, in this day and age, I now I wouldn't think that was so weird. But in the 90s,
but I feel like it wasn't it was probably difficult, but I don't think it was as difficult maybe as it is now.
Fuck no. No, it wasn't. So that's why, to me, a 30
living was totally
well, and
different,
you can't tell me living in a motel is cheaper than living in an apartment. You're paying a
depending on
daily
the
rate.
motel.
Well, that's true. It could be a Roach Motel, and
yeah,
then it's okay. Anyways.
Like that one down the street.
God, Killer Motel. Yeah. Anyway, so he moves in, right? So he moves in, and he lives with Harder. Well, we'll call him Sam, but Sam Harder. He lives with him. Now, at some point, Sam and a few friends, again, they live together at this point. Well, Sam and his friends are out. They come back home and they walk in, and Rhines is watching male porn. And they're kind of like, "What the fuck?" Right? Ooh, that's weird. And so later on the evening, Rhines actually approaches Sam and he apologizes to him. And he's like, "Well, I guess now I'm gay." Right? Nobody, this, you found it out, right? Now, this was a really new and weird concept for Sam, because Sam actually was raised in a strict Pentecostal home, and he was very religious and very sheltered life.
Listen, I've been, like I said,
hold on,
in the Midwest.
I already know. Just
still like that.
Okay, well, you're gonna really you're gonna have some things I think to say. I thought about this.
I'm sure.
Now, the following day, Sam goes to work, and he's talking with one of the owners because, they're just chit-chatting, shooting the shit. And he's telling his owner, "It's so funny because I was raised in a super sheltered house, and now I have a gay roommate. That's fucking weird, right?" That's what he's telling him. Well, within that same week, Charles gets fired. Charles Rhines gets fired.
I wonder why.
Now, you can speculate all you want to, but I personally think that he was fired because they found out he was gay. First of all, remember, this was 1991, or this was 1992 when this happened, actually, because it's 1992 when he gets fired. So it's 1992. In the 90s, being gay was still very much frowned upon. And just out of Sierra, who has lived in South Dakota for 2 years, it still is a very big stigma against gay people in South Dakota. Now, that doesn't mean every person who lives in South Dakota has an issue.
Pockets of it, but those smaller cities especially, they're still very like.
And Sierra knows firsthand because she played softball, and she played softball with a few girls who were lesbians, and they experienced some pretty shitty shit.
Living in the Midwest.
Yeah. And so I firmly believe that they fired him because they didn't agree with his sexual personal choices.
Right.
Sam Harder did come out and say, like, I never wanted him to get fired. Like, I literally was just making conversation with my owner because I had just found out the night before that my roommate was gay and I had no idea. And it was a weird concept for me because I don't understand people that are gay. But I wasn't like, I didn't think he needed to be fired for it.
Right.
So he came out and said, like, very much so, like, I wasn't trying to get him fired. This causes some even more shit, right? So now Sam's still working at the donut shop. Charles is still his fucking roommate. Charles gets fired. Now, Charles is told he's fired because he's not doing his job properly. That's what he's told. But there wasn't any, like, crazy incident that happened. He just, like, all of a sudden randomly wasn't doing his job anymore. I don't think so. So at work now, Sam is being teased by his coworkers for having a gay roommate. Okay, so this is how you can sit here and know that him being gay had something to do with him being fired. Because now first of all, why does everybody know? Who told, first of all? And second of all, why are we teasing Sam about having a gay roommate?
Right.
It shouldn't fucking matter. So there's that. He also claims that at one point, Charles had actually tried to come on to him, which in my honest opinion is very questionable. And I'm not trying to downplay Sam's account of things, but I swear to God, that's always what somebody says. When they, like, that's the first thing they always go, well, they came on to me. Every gay person I know in my life, which I know a handful, I know quite a few, has never once come on to a straight person. That's not their type. That's not who they go after. If, Sam is a straight man, I do not think that Charles is going after a straight man.
Knowing that he's a straight man.
And on top of it, again, there is a big age difference. Let's not forget there's like a 17 fucking year age difference. And nowhere did it say that he was a pedophile. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I just don't know if that necessarily is true, but I do think that that's what is said because this leads into exactly what's going to happen. Right. So that's his thing, is he's saying, like, he tried to come on to me. I was being made fun of. And so I just lived with him for a while. Well, then Charles ends up telling Sam that he is going to rob the donut shop because he's been fired and he now needs money. To which Sam claims he didn't care that Charles was going to rob the shop because what his plan was that he would just wait for the cops to question him. And then he would just tell them about Charles Rhines and tell them that he was planning on stealing from the donut shop, and that would solve his problems and it would get Rhines out of his apartment. So this is why I think the whole coming on to him thing might not be as truthful as it sounds, because he wanted to get rid of him. Because his life, according to him, his life had gone to hell after he told that he was gay. I also think that he was very uncomfortable with the idea of having a gay man living in his apartment, but he didn't know how to kick him out. He was trying to find all the ways to do it. This was it. So now he knows he's going to go rob this donut shop. So he's like, cool, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't care. Go rob it. Here's where things turn. And again, I will save my thoughts for the end because this is a real weird one. So on March 8th, 1992, Sam Harder drives Charles Rhines to the donut shop, knowing full well that he's going to go rob the place. Drives him there. Drops him off. And Rhines goes and enters into the shop using a copy of a key that he had kept. Now he starts to look around, he starts to burglarize, he starts to steal shit. And in the middle of this burglary, 22-year-old Donovan Schaefer walks in on the robbery. Now Donovan Schaefer also works for the donut shop and he is there picking up supplies for something, right? And this is at nighttime. So he walks in on him. Well, as soon as this happens, Charles ambushes Donovan and stabs him in the stomach. And then Donovan begins to beg him to bring him to the hospital. And he's like, I won't tell anybody. Like, please just take me to the hospital. To which Charles is like, okay, yeah, let's take you into the storeroom, tie you up and stab you to death instead. So that's what he does.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Just because he fucking, I guess, wanted to. Now, Rhines ends up...
Probably so much fucking anger. Not that that's okay.
Yeah, I think he definitely didn't want to get caught. Right. Stealing again, because then you go to jail. Mm-hmm. And this is like the third time he's gone to jail for stealing.
People have done stupid shit when they think, oh God, I'm going to get in trouble for XYZ. And then really what they did was worse.
Yeah. So he ends up stealing over $3,000 from the shop and leaves. So he stole a lot. And Sam Harder waits an hour and goes back and picks up Charles Rhines. Okay, so that's what he does. Now, at this point, Charles gets in the car and he tells Harder, and he holds up a fucking knife and he's like, I just fucking killed somebody in the donut shop. And Sam kind of looks at him, and apparently he says he held a knife to his throat and said, if you fucking say anything, I will kill you too. I could see it. See it, right? Mm-hmm. So he's like, cool, yeah, I'm not going to say nothing. And so for like the rest of the evening into like the morning time or whatever, he's watching. Charles is watching Sam to make sure he doesn't make a phone call, to make sure he doesn't, right? So he's like under surveillance. Well, Sam has to go to work. He has to go to work. And so Charles is like, cool, okay, go to work. But if you fucking say anything, I'll kill you. So Sam goes to work and he's actually sees the body. So I think he's actually the one who found the body. He knew the body was there, but he found the body. So he said he ends up going in. Oh, I guess it's not in the morning. It was later that night, like really late at night. Probably, they're baker's hours probably. So they probably start baking at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Right. So it's like he shows up to do this, whatever. So he goes in. He says he ends up seeing the body of Donovan Schaefer. And he said that when he saw it, he got so sick, he actually threw up. Okay, which fair. That's a fair response. Calls the police. The police show up, and the first thing they do is bring him in for questioning because he's the only one there. They tell him like, you can call somebody if you need to, and he's like, I'm going to call my roommate because I need clothes because he's got puke all over his clothes. So he calls Charles and he's like, hey, can you come to the police station? I need you to bring me clothes. Like blah blah blah. He claims that when he saw Rhines, because he said his plan was at that point, he was going to tell the cops exactly what happened. Because he was already he was in police custody, so they could protect him, right? Mm-hmm. He said that when he saw Charles come in with the clothes, he immediately chickened out and got scared. So he didn't say anything.
Fucking puss.
He didn't fucking say anything. He didn't tell him nothing. He just basically lied. Charles and Sam end up going to Donovan's funeral together because, again, they all worked together. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Donovan was Sam and Charles' co-worker. So Charles knew who Donovan was. Okay, so it's not like he was like some random stranger. So they go to his funeral, and while they're at the funeral, fucking Charles is like heard asking out loud I wonder if the killer was at this funeral. Like, what kind of fucking person are you? What do you mean?
The kind of person that wants to be caught.
Right. And then a couple of days after the funeral, Charles ends up leaving on a trip to Seattle to visit one of his friends. Now, his friend happens to be somebody he was in prison with for a long time. So he happens to go.
Tell me that's just not weird. South Dakota, Seattle, really?
I know.
Really?
It's kind of creepy, especially because like he served time, I guess, in Seattle. And he even said like at one point the police officers said that they were a little suspicious of him anyways because they had questioned him, right? So they had questioned Sam, they questioned Charles, and when they were talking to Charles, they were talking about Washington and how he had done time in Washington, and he was like, I'll never go back to Washington State because I still could potentially serve time there I didn't finish my sentence there. So like if I do anything bad, I could get in trouble. And so they found it very weird that he chose to go to Seattle for a trip.
Yeah.
When he just got done telling them he wasn't going to do anything like that. So he goes off to Washington. Well, Sam Harder was continually questioned by the police, and to which every time he says nothing. So now it's a little sus to me because I'm like, but he's not even in the state anymore. But there's a reason. Now here's why he says nothing. So again, Charles is gone. He's gone in Seattle for quite some time because like March. He left in March. Okay. And spoiler, he gets caught. He doesn't get caught till June or July. So like he's gone. What Sam says is he said, the reason I didn't say anything after he left was my brother had been receiving threatening messages from somebody who he didn't know. So it was my family he was going to go after. He said, and he had taken a trip to Minnesota. Sam did. And while he was there, he happened to accidentally run into somebody who was a friend of Charles Rhines. And he said that.
So kind of like I have somebody everywhere watching all your moves.
That's what he said. He said, this had me convinced that I was being watched no matter where I was.
Right.
And I did not want my family to be killed because I actually didn't think he'd kill me. I think he was going to take my family. Fair. That's a fair point. So in May of 1992, so this is now 2 months later, Charles actually ends up calling Sam and he's like, I want you to come to Seattle. Like, you need to get here now. And he's just like, I'm not coming unless I can bring my girlfriend. And he's like, fine, fucking bring her. Sam's girlfriend was Heather Shepard. She was 16 years old. And like, I think Sam at this time, He could potentially be 18, but when he was hired, he was 17. And I think he was hired in 91. So he's like 17, 18 years old. So they're young teenagers. I'm not letting my teenager drive or fly or anything from fucking South Dakota to Seattle. No, thank you. But anyways.
Yeah.
So
I know how that flight is. A long day of travel.
And think that was in the 90s when it
Fuck
wasn't even.
that.
Yeah. And Heather Shepard, I believe from what I read, she was a runaway. So, she was kind of living her life. So anyway, so they go to Seattle. Now, Heather actually had come out and said, those guys were weird. She's like, from the minute that I met them, I was like, something's not right about these two. Like, Charles is really weird. The other guy's really like, they're just not comfortable people to be around. Well, one night they're all drinking, like having a good time. And they tell her that Sam was gay and that he actually belonged to Charles.
What the fuck?
And they also told her about the murder.
Oh my God.
Charles was like telling her how he killed somebody and that's why he was in Seattle and that Sam knew about it and he was keeping it quiet, like told her everything because they're fucking drunk and being shitty, right? But they take these two kids because they are kids and they're literally like bringing them all around Seattle and they're like conning people and shit, like because it's him and his old cellmate and they're whatever, like they're doing all this shit. Well, one day Charles pulls Sam off to the side and he basically says, I'm going to kill Heather. I'm going to kill her. And he's like, what? And he's like, I'm worried that she's going to tell the police the things that I told her and I can't trust her. So I'm going to kill her. And Sam was like, over my dead body, like, you're not going to kill my girlfriend. Like, no, you're not. And so he actually tells her, go hide because they are staying in these motels. And he's like, go hide in the bathroom, lock yourself in the bathroom because like now he's scared. So he's arguing. Well, but Jesus, they're arguing outside of the hotel room or the motel room. So it's June of 1992 and they're arguing outside of this motel room. And this police officer happens to drive by, sees these two people arguing. So he pulls up. And once he gets out of the car, he realizes that one of the people is relatively old and the other is very young looking. And so he immediately was like, radar up. And he's like, I need to talk to you guys. So he separates them. And he's like, I need to know, how old are you? That's like the first thing he asks Sam. And I think Sam said he was 17 because I think he was because he said, I am a runaway. This is what he said. He said, I and my girlfriend are runaways. Please, please, please save us from Charles and his cellmate. Please save us from him. They're keeping us here. They want to hurt us, all these things. So then he's like, okay, well, first of all, you need to give me some detail and I need to see your girlfriend. So he brings her into the motel room, gets his girlfriend out of the bathroom and they separate them and they're questioning them all, right? Well, Heather and Sam tell them everything. The murder, the threats, the fact that he wanted to kill Heather, everything. And so they immediately obviously arrest these men and they take them all back to the police station. Well, when they're there, they call the Rapid City Police Department and they say, hey, we have this guy who supposedly was involved in some sort of a murder in your area. He murdered this kid, blah, blah, blah. And the police officer was like, holy shit, that's crazy that you have him in your police custody because we've started to really take a good hard look at him. We've been suspecting him for some time because one, they narrowed down that there was no forced entry into the donut shop. So they knew it had to be somebody who had access to the keys. So they looked through current and ex-employees. The only one that they couldn't really account for was Charles. Then the fact that he said he would never go to Washington and then took a last minute trip to Washington and had been gone for a long time. There was that. And he had been saying some weird shit. And when he was interviewed, he kind of was just like acting a little off. So they already had him on their radar. So they're like, cool, keep him there. We're going to, whatever. Well, while Charles is in the custody of the Seattle Police Department, he actually confesses to murdering Donovan. Very fucking casually too. Like, yeah, I killed him. Yeah, I put him in the storeroom, tied him up, stabbed him, killed him. No fucking qualm. Doesn't care. So even though he confesses, they have to have a trial because they were not willing to take the death penalty off the table.
Okay.
Okay. And so in the state of South Dakota, the death penalty can only be given by a jury and it has to be a unanimous decision. And so they had originally said, well, listen, he confessed, take the death penalty off the table, no trial, he goes to jail for life. And the prosecuting attorneys were like, no, we're going for the death penalty because I'm pretty sure we can get it because this was really fucking malice. So on January 26, 1993, Charles Rhines is sentenced to death and they found him guilty and unanimously found him guilty for the death sentence because they had agreed that he had killed a witness to a crime because Donovan saw him stealing.
Right.
That he killed for money and that the murder was torturous or showed depravity of the mind, which is true because he stabbed him and then tied him up and then stabbed him a couple more times, right? Like, so I get it. Okay. Now there was an appeal because there were accusations running around that he was given the death penalty, not because of his crime, but because he was gay. Okay. Now his argument was, I know you roll your eyes because I thought that too until I really started to dig into it. Just hear me out. His argument was that his crime was no worse than than a bunch of other crimes that had happened, and not one of them received the death penalty, which was true. He also had brought out proof of this by showing in 1991 and 1992, 17 different murders that were literally the same as his, that none of them got the death penalty. And his sexuality was discussed a whole bunch in the trial. Like it was a topic of conversation, which it never should have been, period. This is a murder trial. That's it. His sexuality should have never been brought up, right? To make it matters worse, the jurors that were doing the jurors in his trial had actually, while they were deliberating his sentence, had sent a note to the judge, because you can do that. If you have questions, you write it on paper, you give it to the bailiff, right? That's what they do. They had asked a couple of different questions, but the majority of the questions they asked were things like, would Charles Rhines have a cellmate? Would he be allowed to create a group of followers or admirers? And would he be allowed to have conjugal visits? So those are the kind of questions they were asking the judge, and the judge refused to answer any of those questions because they were not relevant to the case. Now, jurors after the fact, so after the sentence came out or whatever, because they've been talked to, and again, they're trying to show and prove to the Supreme Court and to the local judges and all the stuff that like he got the death penalty not because he was gay. Mm-hmm. So they talked to jurors, and they had like 3 or 4 jurors in particular that came forward and said that sexual orientation was discussed a lot in the trial and a lot in the deliberation, and that there were quite a few people that were disgusted with his lifestyle. And they felt, though there was one person who came out and said, one of the jurors said that I feel that if we give him the life sentence, it will be enjoyable for him because he'll be surrounded by other men. There was an argument that his death sentence should be overturned based on the anti-gay bias of jurors, and that it violated his right to an impartial jury and due process. And I have to actually agree. And I normally would not.
No, I agree with that.
But I mean, the amount of questions that were asked and the fact that his sexual orientation was brought up, and one of the jurors that they had talked to had said, they never like outright said like, oh, he's gay. But everything they talked about was gay preferences and sexual orientation, and having Sam Harder talking about Sam Harder walking in on him while he's watching male porn, which again, what that has to do with him murdering Donovan, I don't know. So I was very like, I'm not standing up for a killer, but I agree. I don't think he was sentenced to death because he killed a man. He was sentenced to death because they didn't agree that he was gay. So you might as well kill the gay person. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it feels like. And again, there are some jurors who came out and said that's literally what it was. There were people who were literally would not have put him on would have probably fought death row had he not been gay. Right. Mm-hmm. All of these arguments are rejected, and his death sentence stood. So it didn't matter who they brought it to. They all basically sat there and were like, well, too bad. So on November 9th, 2019, Charles Rhines is executed by lethal injection at South Dakota State Penitentiary in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. He was pronounced dead at 7:39 p.m. His last meal was fried chicken, cantaloupe, lefse, black licorice, yogurt, ice cream, root beer, and coffee. There were about 30 protesters outside of his execution because they were like, what the fuck? One of the guys that was outside the outside protesting had said, What I don't understand is this man is behind bars for the rest of his life. Like, why do we have to kill him? Fair. That's fair. I mean, I'm not going to argue that. That's fair. He did something terrible. Yes. But I don't think he went to jail for doing something terrible. That right. But then there's this, and it's like, I'm not, there's this part that I'm like, well, I guess like, I can't be so mad that he's dead. His final words. These are his final words. Edwin and Peggy Schaefer, which are Donovan's parents. So he directly speaks to them. Edwin and Peggy Schaefer. I forgive you for your anger and hatred towards me. And I pray to God that he forgives you for your anger and your hatred towards me. And then he thanked his legal team. Like, bitch, you had me. You had me like right there where I was like, oh, maybe no, you're just a shit human. So to be honest with you, good riddance, fella.
Well,
like,
I don't know what to be honest. For me, I don't care that he got the death penalty. What I think I do care about is the fact that there were very similar cases to his that didn't get the death penalty.
That's where my frustration is.
Yeah. So like the whole him being gay is probably a very big part of that.
Yeah.
That's the part that bothers me.
Of course.
I'm not gay myself, but I've grown up in an environment where you don't judge people based on things like that. You judge them on how they treat you. So for me, like I've never had a problem with people like that. And people who choose that lifestyle. So for me, it's really hard to sit here and be like, well, yeah, that's okay. But
that's what I'm saying.
I'm fine that he got the death penalty.
Here's the thing.
It would have been for not.
Well, and that, you know what? I was right there. Because when I first started researching, I was like, here we go.
A shithead.
Like, here we go. Like that. Yeah. Okay. He's going to use this as an excuse. But then when I really started to see the facts, I was like, oh, no, he really did.
Right.
I mean, every finger and flag points to the fact that he was sentenced to death because he was gay. Not that they were like, you're gay, dead. No, but they used the fact.
It helped them want it to be a harsher sentence.
Absolutely.
Especially because
they hated him.
Well, I know
for
how
his
people
lifestyle
today can get on just the topic
of
being gay or not being gay. And I can't even imagine what the topic was like back then when it was still kind of like new. Like I know it's always been around,
like taboo.
But it was like but it was more like like a known taboo, you know.
That's right.
And so it's just because like nowadays I can't even fathom.
No,
that
and I know that it still fucking happens. That's the thing. The thing is, it still happens, and I know that. But this is like such a
people are gonna come at me, but I feel the same way about race too, because I feel like race does sometimes play a part.
Absolutely, I do too.
To me, that's disgusting. You should be looking at the crime itself. I don't give a fuck what you look like, who you love. I could give two shits about that. It should be, if they bring in your past to try to prove one way or the other, that's fine. But it should be about the crime and what you did pre, during, and after.
So then that's
anything else.
So then that's where it brings me to, remember in the beginning when he got sentenced for 3 years for breaking into it.
It makes me wonder if
I'm saying, did they have some suspicions or no? And then I was like, oh, penalty. Because again, on Fatal Blend, we actually talked about we've actually had a couple of episodes that are racially, in my opinion, racially motivated people who get the death penalty over not based off their race or whatever. But yeah, I absolutely think that in this case, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have had the death penalty. I'm saying the jury needs to do their job and they need to say and do what's appropriate for the crime. Now, if you're looking around and everybody else who has stabbed somebody to death in that manner is getting life in prison, why would one person get the death penalty? Right. Now, do I think the death penalty is appropriate when you murder? I do. So I'm okay with him getting the death penalty for killing a 22-year-old kid for basically no reason.
Listen, I'm a fucking evil person because I've always thought of it as whatever crime you do, you deserve to get the exact same fucking punishment. But I'm even more evil. And I go, if you have like multiple victims, then they bring you to that point of where like you're almost dead. Ooh, and then they do it again for each fucking person you have because you're that big of a piece of shit.
She torture.
I'm just saying, like,
no, but I'm saying
I have no problem with the death penalty.
I don't either. I do not. Now,
but in this case, I kind of have a problem with this
reasons way behind, of doing the death penalty.
Not reasons, but that being gay was more than likely a factor.
You can completely see that was a big factor into why he got the death penalty. And
that's the only reason why I don't feel like that was okay. I like I said, if he would have gotten the death penalty regardless,
and to hear that like some of the jurors actually had the fucking audacity to say a life sentence would be a pleasure. Are you fucking out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? Being in a cell.
Have you ever been to prison?
I was just gonna say.
I mean,
being
I have
in
not.
a cell. Being in a cell for a big chunk of your day, having like not very many freedoms, just because you're surrounded by other men. Because again, there's that ignorant fucking thought of, well, he's gay, so he likes every man. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You and I.
Also, do they not understand how many gay individuals do get raped by other people?
Exactly.
Because they are gay.
Exactly.
Male and female.
Think about this. The only way I can say this. So I apologize to anybody out there.
Pleasure.
If you are somebody who is an anti-gay person, I apologize because you're not going to like to hear this, but I'm just going to say it.
So you probably wouldn't like our podcast.
You won't anyways.
Which doesn't hurt my feelings.
The idea that a gay person likes everybody of the same sex because they're the same sex is the most outlandish thing I've ever heard, because I'm not gay, but I like men. But I do not like every single man I see in the world because I like men. I have a specific type of man that I like.
Oh, and also
why is that not the same if you're gay and you like other men or you like other women? Why are you not allowed to have like a type? And most likely they're not straight because you don't have a chance with somebody who's not straight. I don't understand why this is so fucking hard to understand.
Or the fact that like I said again, personally I am straight, but there are definitely women out there that I'm like, damn. Like, yeah, and I would never do anything because that's just not my type.
Right. I don't.
That doesn't mean I like every fucking guy and every
That's
fucking
what I'm
girl,
saying.
like,
It will never fucking make sense to me why this is the most like ignorant shit I've ever heard. So anyways, that is the story of Charles Rhines. He is dead. And honestly, after his shitty final words, like, bitch, get out of here with that.
Like I said, I think you deserve
it anyways, you deserve to die because you killed a 22-year-old kid that caught you fucking stealing.
That you fucking knew too.
That you knew and he knew you. And you guys were coworkers. So I think you just deserve to die for that. And to be honest, I don't understand why sexual orientation was brought up at all. Well, I do understand why. It was brought up to paint the picture of a gay man, which then in South Dakota apparently is a problem.
You know what? I need to come up with a sound. There's a guy on TikTok that I watch. He's hilarious, and he goes, "Vintage recipes." I need to do that, but piece of shit for like when we just think that they're a piece of shit. So
because he was a piece of shit.
Well, it's a really mean thing to do. And
that's a terrible thing to do.
Most people at least lie and say like, I'm
sorry, or say nothing. Or say nothing, but to a specifically,
nice, don't say it at all.
Yeah, bitch. If you have you specifically pointed out the family and basically forgave them for hating you, bitch, they deserve to hate you. Whether it was because you were gay or not, you killed their son.
And also, sir, if they did forgive you, I hope you know it. It's not for you.
Oh, it's for them. Yeah, that was the shit. Because again,
that also took away that part.
Like, to be honest, I was right there where I was like, man, I kind of feel bad that he was given the death penalty because I just don't think he deserved it. And then that shit came out of his mouth, and I was like, I don't
keep pushing it.
You lost me, bitch.
Keep injecting, keep it going.
Just let him go. So, anyways, that is Charles Rhines. I thought you would like it because you've lived in South Dakota and you can actually attest to some of the issues that they still to this day have, which is really unfortunate.
Shout out to the Midwest. I do love the Midwest, I will say. I do miss it.
Yeah, so. I hear that a lot. She wants to live in the Midwest. I actually have heard a lot of great things about the Midwest. However, I'm going to say this one thing, and no, it's nothing against the Midwest. This case is a perfect representation of why I tell people to mind your fucking business. What happens in someone's bedroom has nothing to do with you. What happens in someone's personal life has nothing to do with you.
Listen,
so mind your motherfucking self and pay attention to your own body.
If we're going to follow the whole what happens at Vegas, stay in Vegas, maybe we should just have that like what happens in my life stays in my fucking life.
For real, what happens in my life stays in my life. What happens in my bedroom stays in my bedroom. Unless you're in my room with me, it's not your business. Keep out of it.
And guess what?
Period.
Even if you're in there, it's still not your business.
Bitch, anyways, if I'm in the bedroom with you, it's my business.
No.
It's my fucking business for sure.
Just mind it.
Anyways, that is it. Follow us on all of our socials, of course. Follow us we've got an Insta and we've got an X account and a TikTok. We got Instagram is Crime B Podcast. X account is Crime Bitches Podcast. And TikTok is Crime Bitches 2. If you have any suggestions or if you have any comments or whatevers that you want to directly talk to us or tell us about, email us at crimebpodcast@gmail.com. I guess this is where I say catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.